Whenever there's a generational split, so let's say for me right now, I was born in 1976. Whenever there's a generational split, there's actually a 5-year overlap on either side of that. So the split between Gen X and millennials is considered 1980. But really, that split goes down to 1975 and up to 1985 because it depends on what created that split in a generation. For that generational split, it was the personal computer. That is what researchers say, like something happened in our world that created a new generation. And for better or for worse, it was the personal computer, the Apple IIe or something similar of that time period. When you take that from about 1980s, when the personal computer became a big thing, and we started putting one on every desk. And so what it comes down to then is when you look at generations, you start thinking about, okay, how early did you adopt on either side of that? So my parents were an early adopter because my mom ran a business.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Jeff Utecht. Jeff is a global consultant, entrepreneur, and an expert in generational leadership and generative AI. He has worked with organizations around the world to bridge generational divides and foster thriving workplaces. He is a Gen Xer with firsthand experience teaching Millennials and Gen Zers. His work has supported Fortune 500 companies, helped create onboarding programs, and guided leaders to embrace the evolving definitions of work, success, and engagement. You can learn more about Jeff at jeffutecht.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Jeff.
Jeff, welcome to the Corporate Couch today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeff. It's the Jeff and Jeff show, so I'm excited. People are going to have to try to keep the Jeff and Jeff separate here on the voices.
Well, your career is fascinating. You've been podcasting since 2006.
Yeah.
We were offline and you were telling me about it, but I think we should start with that. Just talk about what that was like being on like the pioneering of podcasting.
Yeah. I mean, I was a educator at the time working in Shanghai at an international school there. And podcasting was kind of all the thing. I've always been into technology. And so one of the nice things about living in Shanghai is the equipment was relatively cheap. So we did it over Skype. Usually I had a no video. I mean, back in 2006, there was no video. It was just Skype conversations. And I had a little soundboard that you had to take all the audio had to go into a soundboard, plus your microphone into the soundboard. Then all got mixed back into the computer, and used GarageBand, which I still use today,
right,
to mix it down and create the files. And I think I've only missed since 2006. I probably took a hiatus for maybe a year and a half out of that time, just between jobs and things going on. But Shifting Schools is the podcast now. If anybody's got educators in the family, we're really focused on that. Right now, we're doing a whole series on the future of work, which I think we can get into in today's podcast as well, around that, what that looks like. But yeah, every Monday we drop a new episode now, and we've been going strong for about, a good, probably since 2016. I don't think we've missed a week. So
the equipment was cheap in China back then.
You
avoided the tariffs too, because you lived there.
That's right.
So there you go.
Yeah, well, all kinds of things for living there back in the day.
Well, you're pretty. You're on a lot of a couple podcasts, and you're pretty open on social media, but even friends that know you fairly well, Jeff, what would surprise them about you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Things that would surprise me. I think there's still a lot of people don't realize how many different companies I have, and I'm constantly expanding. Just because, again, I like technology and I like to see what things are doing. So recently, I set up a print-on-demand shop through Etsy. Most people don't know I have that.
Wow.
Creating bumper stickers. And it's been kind of interesting because, you're always seeing on TikTok, like you can set a store up in 30 minutes, and you actually can. It was quite fascinating. Not that I've made any money at it. I mean, I've covered my costs at this point, but
Right.
so that's something. And the other thing is, I love camping. I love being outdoors. Anytime I get to disconnect is special for me. So my wife and I just came back from a 7-day road trip through Iceland. We've been to 62 different countries.
Wow.
So we love to travel and get off the grid whenever possible.
Love that.
Yeah.
Did you do any ice bathing in Iceland? There's a friend of mine went there to do that.
Yeah, we didn't do with it being the middle of summer, there wasn't a whole lot of ice bathing to
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
We did do a couple lagoons, like they do the hot geothermal lagoons
Okay.
and with cold plunges and that whole kind of therapeutical thing. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. That's love that.
I now have more pictures of waterfalls than anybody should probably have on their reel. Is really what it is.
It's got to be better than we're recording here about a week after July 4th in the U.S. So, everybody's Instagram and TikTok had fireworks, and
Yeah.
and you see one fireworks, you've seen them all possibly. But anyhow, what's the best bumper sticker like somebody made up? Any obscene things?
Nothing.
Yeah.
A lot of it is I have a Tesla, and not to get political, but I bought my Tesla back in 2016. So it was one of the first. Again, I'm a geek. I love early adoption stuff,
Obviously.
and with everything that was going on, I ended up making a bumper sticker that said that my new car, the car I want now, is a Rivian, the other electronic vehicle that's made here in the U.S. So the bumper sticker is basically. It just says, I identify as a Rivian, that you can put on your Tesla.
Okay.
And so other Tesla owners who are fed up with things that are happening are buying the same magnets, and you put the magnet on the back of your Tesla, and your Tesla gets to identify as a Rivian or a R2, which is their new vehicle coming out.
Nice.
Rivian's new vehicle coming out. So anyways, that's the whole game.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's good. I sold like 20 of them. So my own bumper sticker was free. That's basically where I'm at right now. So.
There you go. And what was your process to learn on? I mean, obviously you're bleeding edge technology, right? So you're the early adopter of technology. But for what advice would you have for somebody? I'll say like myself, I love Snapchat. I could do shit on Snapchat. I love it because it goes away. But I do want to explore TikTok for some various different reasons. What advice would you have for people that are not so familiar with TikTok?
Well, I think again, we can get into the generational talk here a little bit, because it's going to depend on what is the way you learn best, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an educator at heart. I had, almost 15 years in the classroom.
Yes.
And so it depends what kind of person you are. Now, there are different ways that different people learn. I am a jump in and do it, which most Gen Xers are because of the way we were raised. And we can talk about that if you want to. So for me, I just jump in and start playing around with stuff and try to break crap. Yeah. That's literally what I do. For some people that works, for other people it doesn't. There are some people who like to go watch YouTube videos and they want to know how everything's going to work and what the outcome's going to look like before they jump in.
Yeah.
There are some people who, like my wife, likes to follow a recipe. She wants step-by-step directions, and once she finds them, she's good to go. Right. And so I think there's multiple different ways you can do it. You need to understand what's the way you learn best. And then be able to go and create a system for yourself that allows you to learn. Mm-hmm. But for me, I move fast and break things. That's what I've always done. Right. I've started multiple companies. Some of them I've broken really fast. Others are still going today.
Right.
My model always is fail fast, fail loud. So every time you fail, we celebrate it within every company. We've got one that I'm starting with a kind of a partnership that we just had a conversation yesterday around. And we don't even know what the heck we're doing yet, but we're going to do it and see what happens and see how fast we can break it. And when we break it, then we'll know what needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we spin our wheels, I think, in corporations and as leaders, trying to pre-plan what might break and you spend a lot of time worrying about something that might break that never does break. And the thing you weren't worried about is the thing that actually breaks inside the system.
Right.
Right. And so and again, this is my mindset. This is the way I approach everything in life. The road trip we went on in Iceland, we had nothing booked except the camper van. That was it. We booked the camper van. We did research.
Yeah.
And we jumped in the camper van and left and figured it out along the way. And our first night was really rough. It was really rough. Like we figured out what campsites we didn't want. We're sleeping in this little minivan thing.
Right.
And so we didn't even sleep good the first night because we didn't have that figured out. But by the second and third night, game over, man. We had a great trip. So it's the way that we do life, and the way that I just approach all technology, all businesses, is move fast, break things, fail fast, fail loud.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I know your parents were both educators, but where'd you get this kind of like technology bug? And I know it's part of being a Gen Xer,
sure.
But still, I mean, you've taken it to the extreme in a good way.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my parents, and again, this is what sets Gen Xers and millennials apart, is I am on that cusp. So whenever there's a generational split, so let's say for me right now, I was born in 1976. I'm 48, about to be 49 years old. And whenever there's a generational split, there's actually a 5-year overlap on either side of that. So the split between Gen X and millennials is considered 1980. But really, that split goes down to 1975 and up to 1985,
right?
Because it depends on what created that split in a generation. For that generational split, it was the personal computer. That is what researchers say, like something happened in our world that created a new generation. And for better or for worse, it was the personal computer, the Apple IIe, or something similar of that time period. Yeah. And when you take that from about 1980 is when the personal computer became a big thing.
The Radio Shack TRS 80.
That's right. Yep.
Trash 80.
That's right. Right. And so what it comes down to then is when you look at generations, you start thinking about, okay, how early did you adopt on either side of that? Mm-hmm. So my parents were an early adopter because my mom ran a business and so was in the business side of things. Because my family was an early adopter, even though I'm born in 1976 and I am a Gen Xer, I have a lot of millennial things because, for example, by 1984, I'm a huge baseball fan. I have a massive baseball deck and I've got all my baseball cards inside of a spreadsheet. And my dad bought me the once a month, you could buy the little magazine that told you how much your baseball cards were worth. And I'm like, have all my baseball cards in. I'm, some equal cells of trying to figure out how much, they were worth, collectively, maybe $15. Right. But it's just, I was in a time period where I had access to that, right. Where there are people my exact same age who didn't have a computer, didn't touch a computer to maybe high school. Yeah. Because their families didn't adopt it and maybe their high school had it by the time they were in high school. And so we can be the same age and have those different experiences in this overlapping of generations. And that's just kind of where I just so happened my mom ran a business and was very tech centered herself. And so I had early access to computers and programming and logo and all the things back in the day. And it just kind of stuck with me. I think the move fast and break things also is my family. I grew up on a family farm and you're constantly fixing stuff. Right. That's all you do on a farm. Right. Like being a farmer is literally being a mechanic. Yeah. That's it. You're just fixing stuff all the time. Right. And you're learning to innovate and fix things on the fly and having to figure things out. And so that part of my upbringing, I think really, leads to the way that I approach things is it's just constantly try to figure out the next thing and don't assume what's going to break, wait for it to break, and then quickly try and figure out how you're going to fix it. And that's just the mentality I was raised with.
What kind of farming did your family do?
So my brother, I like to say, family farms are dying in America today. So there were 3 boys on the farm. We drew straws. The middle one got the farm. The other 2 became teachers like our parents. Like that's really what happened. So my brother still runs the farm. He's up to about 1,200 acres. Wow. He now does wheat and alfalfa. But back in my day, we did all row crops. So we did sweet corn, tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini. So up at 5 a.m. every day, picking fresh vegetables and then delivering them to all the local stores around Spokane, Washington.
Interesting. I think I was a farmer in the past life. I'm an early riser and like to get to it. But I'm on that cusp between baby boomer and Gen X. What's the big divide there? You mentioned PC for Gen X and millennial.
Yeah. So the big divide between those two comes down to kind of where we were politically and where we were with a little bit of technology at that time. If you remember that cutoff is right around 1965, 1964, 1965. We're just, have gone to the moon. There's this massive shift in public education. Everything's focused on science and math. And you have this generation, the Generation Xers that come after this. You have the 70s, which are peace, love, and rock and roll. And that's really what the 70s become. And that's what Gen Xers are, is this freeing from the baby boomers who are our post World War II, right? And post World War II baby boomers very much were grounded in this idea that you use everything, you save everything, because they were raised by parents through the war.
Right.
Like it was all about creating stability. And so the rebellion for Gen Xers was anything but stable.
Right.
Right. And so for boomers, it's all about stability, which is why when we talk about them in the workforce, they are still today your most loyal employees.
Right.
Like you probably have employees, if you're listening to this, I bet you can probably name a couple employees that started work inside your organization and never left.
Yeah.
Like they don't leave. Like they were taught and they were told, you get a job, you get a good corporate job, you climb the ladder, and there is no ladder to this generation now. They don't see a ladder. It's more like a lattice work for them. But you climb the ladder, you stick with the company, you put your head down, you go to work every day and you get your job done.
Yeah.
Right. Gen Xers we've got all kinds of things going on with us. We're also the generation that for Gen Xers, one of the things that sets us apart is for the majority of us, both of our parents were in the workforce. We're the first generation where both of our parents were in the workforce. And so that becomes another cusp around that 1964, 1965 women's movement piece. And so we have a generation that for the majority of us, Gen Xers, we spent a lot of time alone in our formative late elementary, middle school years, because for the majority of us, both our parents were in the workplace.
Right.
And that impacts the way we grew up. It impacts the way we see the world. It impacts how we are as employees today.
Yeah.
We got to spend so much time alone as children.
Yeah, latchkey generation, right?
Latchkey, we are the latchkey generation, right? We all had a key around our neck, or you had the hidden rock, or whatever it was for you and your family. And for Gen Xers, if you're a Gen Xer born between 1965 and 1980, you are the average age that you spent 1 hour at home with no adult supervision. The average age for our generation is 9.
Yes.
So the average age is 9 years old, one hour alone, at least 1 hour at home with no adult supervision. We were babysitting other kids at age 12.
Right.
Now you look at the generation today, to put that in comparison, generation today, the average age that a child spends 1 hour at home alone
it's 22.
is age 15. Yeah, we're getting pretty close. And it's not even at home alone. Like they've got a tracking device on them called a cell phone. They're not actually home alone.
A chip implanted in their ass at birth type thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Oh.
So it's just this really interesting. So because of those things, we as Gen Xers, we really like to work alone. We're used to being alone. We know how to solve problems alone. We do not like group work. We do not like meetings. We are the generation, Gen Xers, we are the generation pushing the work from home movement, because that's like our perfect scenario.
Right.
I don't have to be around people. I can just get my work done, just get out of my way, leave me alone. Don't make me go to another meeting. Tell me what to do and let me go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we met through Joe Goldberg, you and Joel and Dan.
Yeah.
Put
Dan,
on a Trust to Progress seminar that I was lucky enough to get invited to. And I was just blown away by your presentation about the multi-generational workforce, because I've said countless times on my podcast that it's the hardest time to be a leader today, because no one's had to, lead this many generations in the workforce. Talk a little bit about, some of the main differences. And, we've talked a lot about baby boomers and Gen X, which we represent, but, and I think every generation came through this, right? But it's so different between what a Gen Z is and a Gen X, and obviously a baby boomer. But it's, oh God, they're used to getting, just a participatory. Thank you. Trophy, or medal because they were on the team. We're in our day, probably Gen X also
Yeah.
You earned something, you were the best player or the hustle award, or
Yeah.
I'm not saying, other generations can get that too, but everybody got something. So just
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that. Because I know as leaders, whether what generation you're in, there's different styles and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, one of the things is, to your point, it is a hard time to be a leader, whether you're a manager, like middle management, or you're leading a corporation or a company, because this is the first time ever in United States history anyway. And I'm going to say globally, because we're just living longer, that we've had 4 generations in the workplace. You still have 25% of our workforce is still baby boomers.
Right.
And that's really the issue. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of baby boomers. They're the second largest population. There's still 25% of the workforce is baby boomers today. And I like to joke that our problem with them is they just won't quit. Like they just won't quit. And it's not their fault.
And why is that a problem, Jeff?
Well, it's just they were supposed to, right? They're supposed to be retired now, enjoying life, and that's what's supposed to happen. But things happened, right? We kept moving the retirement age. We kept moving at what age you could fully get your 401k, what age, and so it used to be 55, then it was 60, then it was 62. I mean, it's continued with them, and we're living longer and healthier, and they don't want to quit,
right?
And they don't have to. And so they're sticking around. They're still 25% of the workforce, which just blows my mind, right? They're very loyal, like we talked about. They believe that one of their founding things, because the way they were raised, one of their founding things is you show up. And I talk about this is like baby boomers believe that you need to be seen. Baby boomers believe you don't leave until the boss leaves. Baby boomers believe you put in whatever work needs to happen to get the job done.
Yeah.
You are loyal, you stick around, you do your work, right? That's very much a baby boomer mindset. And again, it's the way they were raised. It's the way they were taught. It's what they were taught to do. And the baby boomers are the generation that this idea of Social Security and the 401k became a thing.
Yep.
And so they were sold on, hey, you stick with a company for 30 years, you get this massive 401k. And so there was all of these mechanisms put in place to be loyal, to stay long, to do your job, to do the 401k matches, to put into retirement. The problem is we're working so long and they're not retiring that a lot of times what happened is that they told their kids, most of their kids now are Gen Xers and millennials. They told their kids, they said, look, let me show you how it's done. You work hard and someday you get to retire and you get to buy the RV and travel America. You get to retire and travel the world, whatever that dream was. And they told their kids this, you work hard and then someday you get to retire and you get to go live your life. Well, what's happened is that they didn't retire, or they waited until health issues caught up with them that forced them to retire, and they never got to live out that dream.
Right.
So you have an entire generation, the next 2 generations, Gen Xers and millennials, look at that generation and say, I don't want to be like that.
Right.
I want to have this crazy notion called work-life balance. Mm-hmm. And it's actually the millennials that come up with the idea of work-life balance is nowhere in American corporate culture until the millennial generation comes along.
Right.
And it comes from this idea of looking at the older generation and say, I don't want to be my parents having to work to 65 to only have my health issues catch up with me and not be able to fulfill my dreams.
Right.
My dad's a perfect example. My dad worked for 34 years as a teacher and as a farmer. He had 180 days saved up in sick leave that he didn't use because he's a boomer and you show up.
Yeah.
Right. He gets a disease. He passed away. He never gets to live the dream with my mom.
Yeah. Sorry.
And this is but that's it. Like like my story is part of the story. Is this we're looking at this like, what the heck? Mm-hmm. That's not what I want for me. So millennials come up with this crazy notion of work-life balance. And this is where you start to get the rub where millennials are lazy and okay, boomer, back off. Because if you're a boomer and you believe that showing up every day is how you do work, and you're looking at your millennial colleague who, if you give them 10 vacation days a year, they take every single one of them every year.
Right.
They will take a thing called a mental health day.
Yep.
And boomers are just like, what do you mean you need a mental health? You show up to work every day. Millennials don't see it that way. Millennials are going to want to live and work simultaneously. And they are constantly in a battle for themselves of trying to manage how much work do I need to live the life that I want to live.
Right.
Now we get to the newest generation, Gen Z. And these are kids that are now about 27, 28 is the cutoff right now. And then the youngest of them is 14 years old, still in our schools. Right. So there are young employees coming in. They have taken this idea of work-life balance to the extreme. They're looking at all the generations before them and saying, look, we don't even want to do that. Corporate America sucks. We don't believe in it. And I can go into all these other things. Like there's a whole thing that happened with universities, and the recession of 2008 has played an impact on the generation that's coming out. Their whole work idea is, I will only work as much as I need to work to live the lifestyle I want to live. And so if my lifestyle is, I want to have $1,000 a month apartment, I want to have a $600 a month car payment, and I want to be able to vacation, I need to make $3,000 a month. That's all I'm going to work. They don't want full-time employment. They don't want to work 9 to 5. They have set a goal for themselves of the lifestyle they want, and they are choosing lifestyle over work. And that is a struggle if you are a leader who is a boomer or Gen Xer looking at this younger generation saying, why don't they want to work?
Right.
It's not that they don't want to work. It's that they're only willing to work for the lifestyle they want in the moment. They're not thinking about retirement. They don't care about 401ks. Social Security is not going to be there for them. They've already written it off. They're living in the moment. Now, that could cause them issues down the line, and we could talk about that, but try to get them to understand that is something different. But they're only willing to work in the moment, which is why we're seeing a lot of corporations right now and a lot of companies I'm working with, especially in the trades. This is a big issue in the trades because we have this generation coming up very trades focused, as they need to be. We know that our current government is trying to get manufacturing back to the United States. We're going to need these employers. Nobody wants to go be in a manufacturing job from 9 to 5.
Right.
And I'm working with organizations and companies now who are starting to look at this idea of fractional work. This generation wants to have their side hustle. They want to be able to work a little bit for your company, but I also want to be, a TikTok influencer, but I need to pay the bills, or I want to do this, but I also want to do some marketing. Or, you know what? I really want to get into finances. I like dealing with money, but I also know how to fix computers or program or whatever it else is I need to do. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at the way that you create inside, especially as leaders. And I work a lot with business owners, small and medium business owners. We're looking at ways that you start to fraction out that work. So for example, one company I've been working with is they do maintenance on devices. So for example, one of their devices is when you go into a bank and you give them a bunch of dollar bills, they throw it in the machine and that machine counts all your dollar bills. They sell that machine to banks, but those machines break down every once in a while. And so the service people have to go out and fix those machines. Well, they can't get any young kids to go out and do this work. And all of the people doing the work are baby boomers, and they're about ready to lose this knowledge because they're all getting ready to retire. And they can't keep a younger employee to gain the knowledge from the older employees to continue to doing the work. So we're talking about, well, maybe it needs to be fractional work. They'll go and do that for 2 days a week. They'll go out to banks and fix machines 2 days a week. On day 3, they're going to run your social media presence. On day 4, they might do something over in the finance office. And on day 5, it might be a flex day. They might not come into work. You might need to call them at the last minute and have them run out and do something for a bank. And if they're free, they'll go do it. But if they're busy hanging out with their friends or doing something else, no, they want to have that time to themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many things that you've said that I'd love to follow up. Just to go back to the working days, Dad having 186 days banked.
Yeah.
I work with this guy, and he was a baby boomer. He led a 750 person sales force for AT&T mid-market salespeople, and I worked with him after that at a small company. He was my boss. And he said one time, he goes, I haven't missed a day in like 20 years. And I said, yeah, but all the man hours that you got people sick when you went into the office, the man hours you lost was, and he just started laughing because, ha ha ha, but I wasn't sick.
Yeah. But I showed up.
Right.
Yeah. But I was there.
Yeah.
I had to set a good example for my employees that you show up every day.
Yeah. I'm curious, Jeff, your thoughts on, 25% of the workforce is baby boomers, they still want to contribute and, and they worked office jobs versus, working at a GM plant for 35 years. So it's a little different. But out of that 25%, a lot of those are at least mid-level and above leaders. So the leadership gap, as well as the intellectual wisdom, any thoughts on those two things?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, most baby boomers, not all, but most baby boomers now are in these mid-level or high-level leadership positions, and they climbed the corporate ladder. They did exactly what they were doing. They've probably been in every part of that organization. I mean, they know how to screw the nuts, and they know how to do the financing, and they know how to human resource. Like, they've climbed it, right? They wherever they end up, wherever they are, they've done. They're 25% of the workforce.
Yeah.
40% of the workforce right now is millennials, right? So they're the other big ones. So, and again, you see this stuff in the news all the time, is like, boomers come out and say millennials are lazy because they don't have the same work ethic according to a boomer work ethic, right? They want work-life balance. So this is where this real understanding, if you are a leader, you have to be able to approach and talk to different generations in what matters to them. That's how you motivate them to work. You can't say, I expect you to show up every single day and put off life until you're 65. You're not going to keep them.
Right.
Actually, right now, if you are a boomer, one of the biggest issues we have is Gen Zers. Those are us. Those are that generation that's 28 and younger. You are doing a really good job. You're doing a really good job in corporate America right now. If you can get one of them to stick in your corporation for more than 3 years.
Yep.
They don't stick around.
Yeah.
Because they don't see climbing the corporate ladder. It's not a ladder to them. You almost have to think of it as a piece of lattice. They're going to come into your corporation, but they're very skill focused. They're going to come into your corporation because they want to gain some skills, but then they're going to want some other skills. And if another organization allows them to have different skills, they'll jump to another organization to get those skills. And then they'll come back. One of the interesting things we're seeing is they'll go to another corporation, then they'll come back to your corporation. Then they'll go out and learn something else. And if they still like your corporation, they'll come back.
Wow.
But if you can't, in your corporation, allow them to jump for skill development, you're going to lose them.
I think COVID obviously changed so many things, but I think one of the things it did, it accelerated the notion of, and I believe it was probably a baby boomer notion, that you had to be in the office to be productive and be a good employee and things like that. But COVID, obviously blew that up because, lots of studies, people were more productive working from home than at the
happier.
office.
The newest study is we're happier.
Happier. Don't you think the companies that are requiring 5-day a week return to work, RTW, crazy, right? I mean, I don't see how it's possible.
I think there's a couple things with that I find very, very fascinating. Again, I'm an early adopter to tech. I'm in the tech world. I do most of my consulting's in tech right now. Of course, most of it's AI. But when we talk about COVID, one of the fascinating things about COVID that I think gets overlooked a lot is when you look back and reflect on it, is that there was no new technology created that got us through the pandemic. It wasn't like we had to create some new thing to all of a sudden have everybody stay home and work.
All right.
Everything that was used, Zoom, already around, Slack, already around, email, Google, Microsoft Teams, whatever it was, they were all sitting there. We just had to quickly adjust to using them in a little bit of a different way. There's no new technology. And that, I think, is part of the issue, because then you come out of the pandemic and it wasn't like it was, we hodgepodge something together to get through that. No, all this technology, we were using it before,
right?
And we're still using the same technology after.
Yeah.
But you just want me to be in the office because you believe, old man, that the only way I get work done is if you see me sitting in the cubicle? Isn't going to work.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts. He creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
but you just want me to be in the office because you believe, old man, that the only way I get work done is if you see me sitting in the cubicle, isn't going to work.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think what we're seeing companies go through this. I think some companies, and I'll use here, I'm based in Seattle. We have companies here, big ones, Microsoft, Amazon, who are using the return to work as a way to cut their workforce.
Oh.
Is really what it is. It's like, you need to return 5 days a week. And if you're not willing to do that, you can leave. And they're leaving. They're just leaving. They're like, the people are mostly Gen Xers are like, I'm not willing to, like, why do you want me to come back? So I can sit in a cubicle, be miserable, and do the exact same work I can do from home.
Yeah.
And I think we're using a lot of it that way. There are other companies who have very quickly adjusted, but the ones that get the news are the ones that are requiring everybody to come back.
Right.
And I think it is a push. The other part of that is it's also a generational thing. Gen Xers, we want to work from home. Many of us are in middle management now. We own our own companies. We're midlife, for lack of, is what they tell us we are anyway.
Yeah.
But we're in our midlives. We've worked our way up. We like working from home, but we also like working alone because we spend so much time alone as kids. The group that loves going to the office are your Gen Zers.
Right.
Your younger generation loves to do everything in group work.
Yeah.
They believe everything should be done in a group. They don't want to have the responsibility to do one thing by themselves.
Right.
And so they love the return to the office because that means they get to be in a meeting space with others. They get to have these meetings and they get to do group work and they get to write on the whiteboards. And, they were sold on the pictures of the Google office and the Microsoft office and the Apple office of all these cool fun places where there's a beer tap down at the corner. And they want that. They want that. And because they were, lack of a better term, children through the they really want that human to human interaction.
Right.
So for example, news just hit the other day, Amazon just hired 100 graduates out of the University of Washington computer program. All of them, think about this, they're all 24, 25 years old. Meanwhile, they just laid off, right? On the other side, they've just laid off a bunch of Gen Xers who weren't willing to come into work.
Right.
But these younger kids, they want to come into work and they're trying to get into their career, and you get to work for Amazon. So we're willing to go into the office, and we love hanging out with other people.
Interesting.
So we're in this interesting flux right now of what the workspace of the future is going to look like. And I think you as leaders, any leader listening to this, you have to look at the demographics of your team, the demographics of your organization, and you have to understand you are trying to meet the needs of 4 unique generations that believe work is different for each of them.
Right.
And how do you meet those needs of the person where they are? What does that person need to be successful inside my organization?
Right.
And that becomes what leadership is.
You may have touched on this. I'm not sure. So one of the things I hopefully did throughout my career, I love building great cultures. I wanted a place where people could have fun, do their best work, do great things together. And, that to me, I don't know why every CEO doesn't want their company to be the best company to work for, but that's another conversation. But the big question I had, and like you may have answered this, when you start working remotely, the people that are already at the company, they know the culture. They especially if it's a good one, right? They know it, they love it. Yeah. But when you bring in new people, that's, you miss the interaction. You have to meet face to face at some point, right? But I would just love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there is, there are some ways that you start to navigate this, and we have to think differently. And I have friends who lead large organizations who are all remote, and when they bring on somebody new, it is, they're in their Zoom calls or Microsoft Teams or whatever it is, but they have very specifically planned every quarter. There is a face-to-face get-together retreat somewhere close to somebody. Yeah. Now you can afford that because you're not paying for office space, right? Right? It's not that you're saving money having a remote workforce. You are meeting people where they are because you are the best person for the job, but you happen to be in Alabama. And I'm the best person for the job, and I happen to be in Seattle. I don't want to move to Alabama, and you don't want to move to Seattle. Right?
Yeah.
And so we can still get work done, but 4 times a year, we're going to have retreats. One time the retreat's going to be in Alabama where you get to host us.
Yeah.
One time it's going to be in Seattle. It's going to be in Chicago. It's going to be in Kansas City. It's going to be, and they are finding success in making sure that there is specific time for what we call water cooler talk, which is what we miss, right?
Yeah.
We miss the water cooler talk, and you're going to have to create those spaces, whether that you create them in person in doing some type of retreat, and very, very important for remote teams.
Yeah.
But you can also create those virtually as well.
Yeah.
And that's the other part of it. And when I'm working with corporations, a lot of it has to do with onboarding programs, especially onboarding a younger generation, is where are the virtual spaces where they get to hang out?
Right.
Like there needs to be a hangout space,
Right.
like there used to be around the water cooler or the lunchroom. Yeah. It could be a Slack channel. Yeah. It could be a channel inside Teams. Yeah. It could be a kayaking group. It could be whatever people are into. You've got to specifically set up those virtual spaces for people to hang out. That helps to create that corporate culture.
100% agree. I love that. Jeff, you mentioned something briefly about the recession of 2008, how it changed, I believe, universities and colleges. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. So the recession of 2008 had it really impacted the millennials. I mean, they're really the generation that got nailed because of the recession. And everything that kind of happened after and has happened after that has been an impact because of that. So again, I'm going to just go back here a little bit. So, and part of this is because I am an educator, and I was in the classroom for 15 plus years. I still do a lot of work in the educational business. And so we deal with this a lot because our job is to prepare students for their future, not our past. That's my tagline. That's what I believe in. Right. But here's what happened. In 1983, some of you might remember this, go back in time a little bit. In 1983, a little report called No Child Left Behind came out. And it's the very first time that our federal government came out and said, we're a nation at risk and we need to make sure that every child is college ready. So think about this, 1983, your millennials, the oldest millennials are now 3 years old. The oldest millennials are 3 years old. So the K-12 system, our entire K-12 system says, okay, we need to prepare every student to go to university. So we did away with all vocational programs. We did away with CTE programs. So you think of shop class, AutoCAD. You think of like my dad was an FFA teacher. My dad, home economic. We did away with all these programs because they didn't focus on getting kids into university. So the entire system shifts and says, we're going to focus on getting every kid, forget about the trades. We don't need plumbers. We don't need contractors. Every kid needs to go to university. And that's what happens. And so we do that. In 2002, as these kids are going through, of course, in 2002, No Child Left Behind comes out, which again doubles down on this idea of college readiness. We want every kid to be college ready. And we bring in standardized testing to test kids to make sure they're college ready. You have an entire generation of millennials now who are focused on going to university. And I'll just, for anybody that's a parent out here, because this is something I deal with all the time in education, you will always hear that test scores are down, test scores are down, test scores are down, because we're chasing the millennial generation. That entire generation, when it comes to standardized tests, saw growth every single year. We told them that they all had to prepare to go to university, and they did exactly what we told them to do. And then they all went to university. And throughout the entire millennial cohort, we see universities explode. We go from a height of around the start of the millennial generation, about 12 million people at universities. By the height of it, by 2008, 2009, 18 million kids in universities. That means more universities are opening up. Universities are busting at the seams, which means they can afford, it costs more. And the adults in these kids' lives at the time told them, like, don't worry about it. Just go get the degree. Go get the degree. I know you're going to be $100,000 in debt. Go get the degree. The jobs will be there. The jobs will be there. Go get college ready. And they did exactly what we told them to do. And the problem is nobody saw the recession coming in 2008. And you've set up this entire system. You almost think of it like a factory line. This entire system is pushing graduates out the other end of it. And all of a sudden 2008 hits and the recession kicks in and there are no jobs. And you have kids standing around with their piece of paper diploma saying, I'm $175,000 in debt. And you told me there was going to be a job here. Now there's not a job. So you have a generation that looks at corporate America and says, screw you. Millennials have no loyalty to anyone.
Right.
Now, they also make, on the education side, it's also part of the reason we're having a problem in education now, because they now have children and they're looking at the educational system and saying, I don't trust you. Look what you did to me. And that's some of the stuff you're hearing about when you're reading news, what's happening in K-12 public ed, what's happening in our universities. Universities, since that height, have started to plummet. We're losing 2.2% enrollment year after year in our university system because, as happens with generations, the next generation coming up, Generation Z, looked at their usually older brothers or siblings and said, holy cow, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be $175,000 in debt and have to move back into mom and dad's basement because I got a degree with no job. That sounds horrible. So you have an entire generation that says, I don't believe in going to university. I want to get a job right out of high school. I'm going to focus on skills, not degrees.
Right.
And corporate America did the exact same thing. They said, we've got all these people sitting here with these diplomas and they don't know how to work. You know what we need? I need to see what skills you have. And so now we are in this skill hiring stage where you have all of these companies are now assessing the skills. They don't care if you have the degree. Can you do the work? Do you know how to do the work? If you know how to do the work and you've got the skills to do the work, you don't need the degree anymore.
Yeah. I love that, actually. I think
I love it too. Yeah. I love it too. But you know who doesn't like it? A bunch of millennials who are $175,000 in debt. Right. And and I'm going to guess there are millennials listening to this podcast, or everybody knows a millennial that has the diploma that is not working in a job that is the diploma or degree that they went to university for.
Yeah.
Because they got hired for their skills that are outside of the degree.
Yeah.
And so the entire shift is now we've gone to skill-based hiring. And what's happening in our K-12 systems, we're like, oh my gosh, we need plumbers and contractors. So now we have CTE programs coming back, right? We've got home ec. We now have like one of the school districts down the road from me. You can graduate high school with a chef's degree. Like you've got an associate's chef degree out of high school.
Love that.
And you're now working down at or a forklift degree. One of the number one jobs in America right now is a forklift driver.
Yeah.
All you have to do is be 18 and have a forklift certificate, and you're making $62,000 a year somewhere in a warehouse.
Yeah, at 18, beautiful.
At 18, beautiful. Yeah. And these kids see that, and they're like, "You mean I don't have to be $150,000 in debt and still make enough money to live the life that I want?
Yeah,
not enough money to get rich, just enough money to pay my bills, do my thing, and travel once in a while, and whatever that is for that specific person." So that's how we got here. That's where how that little 2008 to 2012 really screwed over the millennials.
Right.
And we're still feeling that cohort is still just now coming out of the other side of it, I would say.
Yeah. Got it. It's just so interesting. I could talk on and on about this, but are you familiar with Seth Godin?
Yes.
I think he's brilliant. I have a bromance with him since the mid 90s. I've actually had him on my podcast.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah, that was a big, thank you, Seth. But I love his thinking about a lot of things, but he talks about public education and how we built the industrial complex pre-World War II, and schools were built for compliant workers that would follow directions, right? You're kind of the opposite, right? You're like all about what is the future for our kids that are in K through 12 now, and how do we prepare them for the new world of work? So, and there's so many things going on, and I just love to hear your thoughts, especially with AI, that, because I mean, you can look up anything now, right? And you can write papers on AI, and
so it's a great question, and I think what happens is K-12 is a slow system to respond, as it should be. Our government, let's just go at the federal level, our government is always slow to respond, which just pisses us all off. Okay. But it's supposed to be slow. It's supposed to be slow. There's supposed to be checks and balances. You're supposed to go through the thing. They were supposed to disagree and get it right? That's it. K-12 is the same way. But K-12 does respond. We have seen this idea of skill-based come into schools in the last, I would say, at least 5 years, and it is gaining more momentum every year, where we are now understanding that not every kid's going to go to university. Not every kid needs to go to university. And what we've created is different pathways for students throughout high school. Now, the problem with this is not every state has those same requirements, because this is, what happens when you have 50 individual states. You get 50 different ways, and every state is in charge of their own public ed. That just is the way the United States works. But here in the state of Washington, because that's the state that I work a lot in and I know the most about, we have 7 different ways to graduate high school. One of them is your traditional way, right? Just take your classes, whatever those 26 credits are, 2 years of foreign degree, whatever, go to university. You can do that. You can also take the military exam. And if you pass the military exam, you graduate high school. You want to go in the military? You don't need to go. You don't need all that other stuff.
Right.
You're going into, because you've decided, or you and your parents or whoever have decided that's your pathway. You go do that. We've also here in our state, and other states have adopted this too, if you do 2 years of any CTE program, that's career and technical education, you do 2 years. So you take woodshop 1 and woodshop 2 and you have over a 3.0 average, that is a graduation requirement. You want to take welding 1 and welding 2 and you graduate with your certificate in welding, that's a graduation
make 80,000 a year, sure.
And you're making $80,000 a year,
right.
And the company will pay for you to go get your associate's degree, and then you're making 110 grand a year. And that's like legit what is happening with welding programs, right? So K-12 is reacting to this idea of being skill-based. We also know one of the skills right now, because of technology and specifically AI, one of the most sought after skills right now is AI. Understanding it, knowing how to use it, being able to leverage it in really impactful ways. And the work that I'm doing in K-12 now is all around that. How do we make sure that we are preparing students for a future where AI is going to be a given? For our generation, Gen Xers, it was a given that when you went to work, they were going to give you a computer and you were going to know how to use it. It was just given. Nobody was going to, right? And so we probably, I don't know if you did, but you probably took classes in Microsoft Word, or like we had to take the typing class or whatever it was for us to prepare us for that workspace. This generation is going to just be assumed. It's going to be very quickly. Right now, it's the number one skill that is being looked for, but it's very quickly going to be assumed that you just know how to leverage AI to do whatever job I've hired you to do. And in education, we're struggling with this because we call it cheating.
Right.
But you know what leaders call it? Leaders call it getting your work done in a timely manner.
Right.
And so we're in a flux.
Yeah.
Education will figure it out because education is slow.
Yeah.
But we've got leaders across this nation that are doing incredible things in K-12 schools. We are preparing those kids. We are able to, I've got two high school kids that started their own AI startup and sold it already. They weren't even seniors yet and sold it for over $2 million because you can do this now, right? They've got the skills. They know how to build AI.
Love it.
And so there's a whole new way that work is getting done. And you start thinking about how all of this comes together. K-12 is focused on skills. We've got the internet. We've got all of these ways that allow you to showcase your skills in different ways. We've got organizations and corporations now that are focused on skills over degrees in hiring. And it's all matching up to be this really cool, amazing shift that the entire system's going to make.
Right.
Some of us are going to work from home. Some of us are going to be in the office. Some of us are going to still need to show up every day and put rivets in airplanes. Like that's just the work.
Right.
But you're not going to show up 5 days a week to do rivets in airplanes. You might do 3 days rivets in airplanes. And then you might do 1 day in social media and another day in doing your side hustle because that's what you want to do. Right. And we're just going to have to think about work differently. And I think that's it. When you're thinking about, you have to think about work differently in the world of AI. Right. It's not just the work we do. It's the idea of what work is. Right. And that is a mental shift we're all going to go through over the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah. So, in my day and maybe a little bit in your day. So when I didn't understand a book in English, I was in advanced placement English. I still remember Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad and got the Cliff Notes. You had to buy the Cliff Notes. That book was so complicated for me. I don't even know if I understood the Cliff Notes, but it's today's world. Like you can just put that in ChatGPT and that you can get as many answers as you need. Like you don't even have to read the book. Like what is that going to look like? And will that even be a requirement to read classic books? I don't know. Just thoughts.
Yeah, I think it will still be a requirement to read classic books. I think the way you will leverage AI is you will bounce your ideas over what the main theme was of the book. Mm-hmm. Because the AI, it's probably because its job, right? Generative AI is a creation machine.
Yeah.
Its job is to create something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to create some ideas for you. It's going to be your job as a human to decide, are those ideas right, wrong, or how do you push back?
Right.
It's the same thing in the workplace. When we're using AI in the workplace, AI is going to replace some people, but not very many people.
Right.
Even the World Economic Forum says it's only going to replace 90 million jobs globally. Globally, right. It's only going to replace 90 million jobs. It's going to create over 170 million new ones, right? It's not going to replace us. It's going to work alongside us. Mm-hmm. And the idea is like, we have to understand we are still the critical thinkers and holders of that information and thought process. But yeah, can it write me a white paper very, very quickly? Yes, it can. Is it getting really good so that most of it is correct? Yeah, but it's still on me to make sure that it is completely correct. Right. It's still on me to somehow learn the information that I need to learn to get my job done.
Right.
It's going to support us. What I like about AI right now, especially right now where we are, and it's constantly moving, is it really gets you past that like blank page moment.
Right.
Right. Even, and I don't know if you use it for your podcast, but I use it in my podcast all the time. We get done. I use Riverside, the same thing we're using here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I download the transcript. I use ChatGPT. I go over to ChatGPT. I've created a custom bot that has all the research and SEO information needed on what makes the best show notes. So I upload the transcript from our podcast here and say, I need show notes. And it, based on all the research that I've trained it on, I get perfect show notes that are SEO'd perfectly. So we show up in search results, copy paste.
Right.
Right.
I mean, I may need to talk to you offline about this.
Yeah, you can talk to me about this, but this is some of the power.
Yeah.
That is something I hated to do.
Yeah.
And whatever I was doing wasn't working. Since I've been using AI, we are now a top 3 educational independent podcast.
Wow.
And half the time I read the show notes, I'm like, this sounds horrible. Nobody's ever, but it's not about reading it. It's about the search engine optimization to get ranked so people listen, right? It's not, because I'll read them and be like, I could have written something way better, but it wasn't SEO'd for other people.
Yeah.
And this is like, and what am I learning? I am learning now from the AI that every time I do this, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I never would have thought, to frame it that way or use those words or to use that hashtag or whatever.
Yeah.
The tag was. So there's this back and forth.
Yeah. I don't know if you can answer this quickly, but I'd love your thoughts on, we talked about this kind of the fractal work that people are going to do, but how do you see companies changing the most outside of maybe, like you're going to fraction out work amongst your employees? What other changes do you see? And I know it's hard to predict the future, but I just love your thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just really depends on the industry that you're in. I think, right now, a lot of the industries that are hurting are our manufacturing industries, which is so crazy to think.
Where people have to go to the office.
Where people have to go to the office, right? And they have to be there. You need somebody to put rivets in cars or whatever it happens to be that you're making. And they're the ones I think right now that we're going to see what comes out of this work culture, as they're going to be the first ones that really have to think about this idea of fractal work.
Yeah.
I still think we're still trying to figure out what is the right balance between having people at work and having people work from home. Again, the research just came out a week from before we started recording this, that a big study coming out saying that people are just happier working from home. And that's huge. People want to be happier. And so you're going to have this constant flux of, just trying to figure out what's the right balance. Like, we've got companies I'm working with that are 3 days in the office or 3 days at home, 2 days in the office. For some companies that works, some companies that doesn't. I've got other companies that are fully remote because the talent is all over the world at this point, and you can connect all over the world. And so it's just, every business is going to have to think deeply about, where do we need people? What does that look like? And how do we make sure we can create a culture and keep whatever that culture is that we want visible within our corporation?
Right.
Which is why the thing that you came to, the trust to progress, our trust progression. I talk about generational leadership. Joel Goldberg, the announcer for the Kansas City Royals, talks about trust. How do you build trust within teams? And Dan James, who's a Paralympic gold medal winning coach for the U.S. Paralympics team, tennis team, talks about creating impact. And that's the one-day workshop that we are doing, is taking these 3 ideas and say, how do you understand generations? How do you build trust between them? And then how you as a leader figure out a way to create impact within those teams.
Right.
That's the workshop that we're running right now that is very successful with team leaders. That is kind of like an aha moment that we're finding.
Yeah. And having attended, it's phenomenal for if anyone gets a chance to do that. That's fantastic. Jeff, I'd love to help 2 groups of people. I don't know if I feel, a little hesitant to ask, but I ask every guest because we've talked about maybe college is not for everyone. But if you did graduate from college, or let's say high school today, and you want to get that first post-education career job, what advice do you have for them as they begin their career journey?
We're seeing this throwback, which was very much a Gen X thing. If you were graduating today, I think one of the first things you do is you look for an internship. Internships, again, are huge. They were for Gen X. They kind of went away for the millennials, and they're back again. Even for high school kids. I talk about high school kids all the time. I was like, if you don't need a job, you need an internship. Go start building your skills. Build your skill profile. What are the skills that you love to do? What are things that you are good at. I did graduate from university. I've got I was a K-12 educator, but I will tell you, I'm dyslexic. And part of being dyslexic is I don't read very well. Like even still today, I read it at about a sixth grade reading level. Right. But you know what I'm really good at? Talking. And I'm really good at doing keynotes, and I'm really good at motivating people. Right. Because I was a teacher. I had to motivate kids every day.
Yeah.
And so,
which is the hardest group to motivate.
Yeah. But that's one of my skill sets.
Yeah.
My skill sets is I probably too much can talk,
Yeah.
And I can get a point across, and I can motivate people to do work. And I think if I was graduating today, or whenever I get an opportunity to talk to high school kids, it's start building your skill set and get on LinkedIn and start putting those skills on your profile. Like what skills do you have? And I don't care if your skill is like mowing the lawn. That's a skill, because you know what mowing the lawn tells me? You're willing to do it once a week.
Right.
You're willing to show up, right? There's different things you see with inside these skills.
Sure.
You love doing computers, great. You love doing social media, amazing. You like doing audio, you like playing the guitar. These are all skills that start stacking on top of each other.
Yeah.
So don't chase jobs, chase skill development.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. And that second group I love helping is that, everybody can be a leader in a company, whether you're an individual contributor or have, people that report to you. But the ones that were individual contributors and want to take that path where they're actually leaders in an org chart that have people reporting to them, that first managerial role, what advice would you have for them as they begin that leadership journey?
Well, it's a really good question. And I think one of the interesting things that we find, and we're learning this the more we do the trust progression workshop, is it's very fascinating. Most people end up in leadership roles, never had training in leadership. It was, you were really good at your job, so you should lead others. And then next thing you know, you're leading 2 people, and then you're leading 6. And next thing you know, you're leading a team of 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the heck? I don't know what. And part of that is you have to understand and for lack of a better term, and it's a horrible term, we call them soft skills. They're people skills, right? And they're not soft. Right. They are the hardest skills to wrap your head around. But it's part of this understanding people. When you move into leadership roles, your job is all about people. It's not about the product. It's about supporting others to be the best that they can be in that moment, whatever that means that they need, right? And that is where understanding where each generation is coming from helps us as leaders to think about that millennial isn't lazy. That millennial has a different outlook on what they believe work in life should be. How do I support them so that they are happy and they want to come to work and they show up with a purpose? What do they need to be successful? And it's going to be different for the millennial than it is for your new 25 or 6-year-old.
Right.
And it's going to be different for your Gen Xer.
Yeah.
And as a leader, you have to understand the people, not the product.
Right.
You already know the product. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a leader. Your job now is to focus on the people. And what does each individual person need in your team to be the best person, most successful person in that role? And I go back to 3 things. And if anybody do you read Dan Pink?
Yeah.
I'm a big Dan Pink fan.
Yeah.
Right? Seth Godin, I bromance over. Dan Pink, another one, right?
Yeah.
Dan Pink wrote, I think, the best book on this called Drive, where he researches the 3 things that motivate people to do work. Money's number 4. The first 3 things, and they're so important: purpose, mastery, and autonomy. Do your employees, if you're a leader, do the team that you lead, do they understand the purpose? Do we make sure our purpose is clear? Do they have the ability to master something? What is it that they're mastering? And again, if you think about skills, hey, Jeff, I really need you this, but are you interested in mastering this skill? Because I'll pay for you to go do some professional development. I think you would be really good at X, Y, and Z. What if we made you the skill person for X, Y, and Z? Would that be something you're interested in? Because I see you're interested in this. I see you're interested in wanting to be social media TikTok. What if I could give you, I'd pay for a course for you to do some social media stuff. Would that give you a purpose to show up every day to do the job I need you to do? Right? So purpose, mastery, master something, and autonomy. Nobody likes to be micromanaged, right? Now, the feedback you give different generations is different. Gen Xers, if you have Gen Xers in your company, the best thing you can do is tell them that they need to go figure out how solve a problem and let them go do it. We are the best because we were young, spent a lot of time alone. We figure stuff out. We just figure stuff out. That's one of our superpowers as a generation. Give Gen Xers their marching orders and say, "Hey, I'll check in a week. Let me know how it goes." Versus if you're playing with, a 25 or 26-year-old, that autonomy has to be small bites. Hey, I'll do this. I'm going to check in a couple hours. I'm going to check in a day.
Right.
I'm going to call you on the phone to ask you how you're feeling today.
I'll text you about it.
I'll text you about it, right? Like there's this, like they're going to need much more touch points than your Gen Xers.
Yeah.
It's not because they're lazy or they need a pat on the back. It's because they expect different from their leaders.
Yeah.
And it's your job as a leader to understand what each individual person needs in your team.
Yeah. Jeff, you've been fascinating. Such a fun. We didn't even get to you getting a Bill and Melinda Gates grant and technology leadership project and talking in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and for the UN and all that. But hey, we could spend another couple hours next time or another hour next time. But thank you so much. I'm honored that you came on the podcast. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Again, if people, of course, over on LinkedIn, you can follow Trust to Progress, where you can see the trust progression workshop that we're bringing around the country, or over at jeffutecht.com. So either way.
Well, we had our first Jeff and Jeff podcast.
Jeff and Jeff show.
The Jeff and Jeff show. I love that. I'm fascinated by Jeff Utecht. I think he's a fascinating person. And I'm just so glad that I went to the Joe Goldberg and Jeff and Dan Brown seminar on trust and leadership. And he's just fascinating. I mean, the whole generational workplace, why leadership is so challenging today, because no one in history has had a lead 4 generations at work. And he's just a walking chat GPT in regards to the data and what makes the generations different. And you and I have chatted about it before. Like, I mean, there's segmentations, right, at the end of the day, and people are fall into a lot of them. But you're outliers. Like, you're a baby boomer, but you said you were a latchkey kid, right? His move fast and break things philosophy. I mean, he's been a tech guy his whole life. An educator. He was a teacher. His parents were teachers. He got into podcasting in 2008. Like, I've never even heard about that. And he was using Skype and a mixer and putting the audio together. He's just a talk about early adapter. Like, he's like the first one in line for stuff.
Yeah.
And what he's trying to do in the K through 12 space in terms of, building, the workforce of the future and preparing the K through 12, kids, to prepare them for adulthood. And I loved his, it was so interesting how the connection between the No Child Left Behind Act in 1983 pushed everyone to college, right? So no child left behind. We need to college prepare. So that set enrollment records for years after that. And then the 2008 recession hit. People out of college could not get jobs that recently graduated. And, they had massive student debt. And then that led to the Gen Zers, born in 1997 through, I think, 2012, the rebellion against college. So now enrollment rates are now down. And there's so many different ways to learn. We've talked about that, but he's just a brilliant guy. And I could have talked to him easily for another hour, if not more.
We need to have him on again. We need to have
I would
Jeff
love
and Jeff
that.
Part 2.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, hey, who's the famous in the tech industry? Who's the famous move fast and break things person today? More famous than Jeff and Jeff.
Move fast and break things. Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. How many SpaceX rockets has he blown up?
Right.
And he blows them up because he's not afraid to blow them up. And what is their message every time they blow them up? Well, we sure learned a lot. Let's not do that again.
Yeah. Well, that's like, the person that, made a $10,000 mistake at work, and they go into the office of their boss thinking they're going to get fired, and they're not going to fire him. The guy goes, well, why? I just made a huge $10,000 mistake. He goes, no, then I just gave you $10,000 of trading that you're going to be a lot better going forward.
And historically, who is another move fast to break things person from long ago is Thomas Edison.
Oh yeah.
When he invented the light bulb, and his first 10,000 filaments didn't work, and he said, well, I just learned 10,000 different ways not to build a light bulb. So
right.
It was great. Jeff was an amazing guest, and I just loved every bit of it. One of the things that I really liked about him was this is towards the end of the interview, where he was talking about leadership, and he said most people that are in leadership roles today have never had any leadership training. And,
yes.
Either that, or else you could say it another way, the first leadership training that they have was their previous promotion. And boy, that is my life. We've talked several times about my failures as a leader on this podcast. And that is exactly what happened with me. And what he is saying now is that, no, that's happening with almost everybody.
Yeah, I am just shocked that it still happens. And it's not just small companies. I was talking to someone, and a family member got promoted to a leadership role, first managerial role, big company, recognizable name brand, no training, zero. I'm like, crazy.
Or if they've gotten training, it was about the product, not about the people. And that's right. One of the things that Jeff says is that your job, when you get that promotion, your job is all about the people and nothing about the product. But you got that job because you knew everything about the product, regardless of whether you knew anything about people.
Right.
So, why are we still doing that? Maybe
right.
That's something the corporate couch can do something about, can do something different. Maybe our listeners can say, I'm going to be the one that's going to break that chain finally,
right,
and give leadership training to potential leaders,
right.
or maybe give it to everybody and see how the spaghetti on the wall sticks.
Yeah.
I think it was great. It was a wonderful interview. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Everything he talked about in terms of the generational aspect, and how baby boomers still make up 25% of the workforce and are the second largest, and they just won't quit.
Yep.
Just like you and I, although we're not in corporate anymore.
Just keep going. Well, I would still be going if I thought I could. So.
Yeah, there you go. Joe, anything new going on in your life?
Yeah, every once in a while, I'm sitting here in my office right now, and every once in a while I get cold in my office. And you know what I do when I get cold? I go stand in the corner because it's warm there. It's 90 degrees.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.